Hi, I'm Kazak, and I'm super excited to be doing this video. The first batch of changes for the Frost talent tree are out on the alpha for the War Within, and I think they're great. They bring back some favorite tier sets, they introduce some totally new things, and I'm looking forward to getting to try these out in some real content here and seeing how Frost does. So for this yap, we'll break down the changes and look at them in depth, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at the big picture of how this shapes Frost for the next expansion. I'll have some written feedback on the forums when this video goes up. A link to that will be in the description. And one more bit of housekeeping before we start, that everything in this video is first impressions feedback. I have not yet had a chance to, actually play Frost in some challenging new content to see how these talents will work in the upcoming expansion. So jumping into these changes, I'm going to go ahead and start first with just kind of the layout changes that they did, because I don't think these need to be done in a one-by-one breakdown. They baselined Fatal Fixation, and they took out Cold-Blooded Rage and Invigorating Freeze. Getting rid of CBR and IF was a great change. We had been asking for those to go away or something happen with them, kind of for all of Dragonflight. They were talents that were so weak you wouldn't even notice if they did nothing, and they just cost 2 points to unlock our capstones. I'm really glad to see that they're just gone, and the new layout of the tree here overall supports flexible pathing much better. We don't have this weird 2 capstone design. You pick one capstone that you're going for, and you're locked out of the other one, because Absolute Zero wasn't, I think, really a capstone. It was, the last node in the tree, but it wasn't something that was anywhere near the power level of the other 2 true capstones. Whereas what they've added now with the Long Winter and Shadowed Frost, those do feel a little bit more build defining. So this overall is a big improvement, and we'll circle back to the layout a little bit later in the video when we look at where this leaves things like picking Obliteration and Breath at the same time, and what kind of points we have left to play with after we've picked our main build defining talents. And the changes to existing talents, first up, Breathless and Dragosa damage increased by 25%. This is compensation for the nerf duration. It's exactly what they did in 10.0.7, I think it was, and it's a fine change. I'm not 100% certain where I fall on this. It's not to say that more damage is bad, but this is now to 25% buffs for Breath. It's gone from a 60% AP coefficient to a 94% AP coefficient over the course of an expansion. To me, that signals there's maybe some power creep happening there, and down the line we could still risk Breath being oppressive because of how much damage it does. It's hard to say, and this may be nothing. This is, why I call this video a yap. These are just my first impressions, my first bits of feedback. Because I also do see, on the other hand, with Breath damage going up so high, Frost could be a strong 2-minute spec again and have really great burst off of Breathless and Dragosa. So we'll just have to kind of see how this shakes out, but more damage is good. And the other big change to existing talents is that Chill Streak can now bounce off the Death Knight if a second enemy target isn't found. This is bringing in the tier effect from Amir Drasil. This is a great change. I do think that Chill Streak as a talent is still going to struggle to find a place a little bit, because if you want to take that for some extra AoE output, you're realistically looking at a 2-point investment. You need to pick up Chill Streak, and then you need to pick up Enduring Chill. Piercing Chill, it just lags Enduring Chill, and so you end up with these 2 nodes over here on the far right of the tree that you've got to commit to for some extra AoE output, and that output does the best at exactly 2 targets, and there's just not a ton of exactly 2 target content in the game. And when it's going up against other things you might flex for AoE, like the new Frost Scythe, Frost's Fury, absolute zero. Heck, even Cold Heart. Cold Heart hasn't seen play lately, but new expansion, that could change. So that makes it tough for Chill Streak to find its niche. But at the very least, with this change, we can now consider Chill Streak in more situations, so that if you're doing something like in a dungeon, it still works on bosses. In a raid, it works on bosses that have ads and then phases of single target, whereas before, those pure single target situations would really just kind of brick taking Chill Streak at all. So moving on to the new stuff, I think stuff we're all really excited about. First up, we have Shattered Frost. When Frost Strike consumes 5 Razor Ice stacks, it deals 50% of the damage to nearby enemies, deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets, and this is a capstone that comes after Shattering Blade. And I really like where this is positioned. I really like the design. This means if you're playing Shattering Blade, you can just stop it at Shattering Blade. If you're doing mostly single target, but you've got this AoE option you can flex into. Now, Frost Strike is a core part of your rotation, even in AoE, and you don't replace Frost Strike with Glacial Advance as soon as you hit 2 targets. In terms of feel, this is a tabbed target talent for those who have their eyes open for that, either if you like that or if you don't like that. The way it works right now, it procs Razor Ice in the little explosion that it does. So this means once you get into 3, 4, 5 targets, it basically starts to sustain itself. You hit it, you maybe press Oblit once, you press Howling Blast once, and then you're going to the next target and consuming your Razor Ice stacks. And I found doing tests on the alpha, there were times where I was just tab target, Frost Strike, tab target, Frost Strike, tab target, Frost Strike. And then I got to stop to build Runic Power. I think where the important things to watch out for on this one is the Runic Power economy and then proc management. I can see this adding a little bit of friction or feeling awkward to play with when you have a Killing Machine proc, you've got your Ryan proc, Pillar is about to come off cooldown, and you've got all these Razor Ice stacks out. You're kind of like, well, what do I do? Even when when we have the priority list and we go, okay, yeah, you ignore Rhyme and just consume those stacks, you can still see that for many people, it will still feel awkward to ignore something to keep popping these stacks. So it may be when the expansion goes live that we see this no longer applying Razor Ice stacks itself, and this feels a little more manageable. I don't think that's a reason to be put off of this talent. It is fun to play with. It is a new way of playing Frost in AoE, where now you're thinking about Frost Strike and you're thinking about what target to Frost Strike. You're not just spamming Glacial Advance until you're out of Runic Power. I really like this. Next new talent is Cryogenic Chamber. Each time Frost Fever deals damage, 15% of the damage is gathered into the next cast of Remorseless Winter up to 20 times. This works by dropping a single pulse of damage when you cast Remorseless Winter. Not too much to say here. It's a nice AoE increase. It's not something we can really play around a whole lot because you're still going to be using Remorseless Winter as much as you can. But I think just the flavor of something that hooks Frost Fever is something new and creative for the spec. Next, we've got one that a lot of people are really happy to see back on the spec. Arctic Assault, where consuming Killing Machine fires a Glacial Advance through your target. It's a new capstone right after Obliteration. This brings back the Shadowlands tier set. People enjoyed that set a whole bunch. They're going to be really excited to have this back in keys. It's great for Obliteration to have an upgrade, and it gives you that same thing you saw with Shattered Frost, where you can stop at Obliteration if you're not doing AoE, but then you can flex down into this if you're doing AoE focused content. If Razor Ice is going to continue to be available through talents, this would be my preferred way to do it over Avalanche. I think Avalanche is in an awkward state where it's far down in the tree and it has massive power, but that's just because it's the most consistent way of getting Razor Ice. This opens up an alternative to picking that, and not every build has to take Avalanche just to get those Razor Ice stacks. Now this talent does come with a significant issue. Hey there, Kazak from the future here. I recorded this voiceover earlier this week before the latest alpha build. Blizzard clarified in this week's update that Arctic Assault is not supposed to proc Runic Empowerment, and it'll be fixed in a future build. That means what I'm about to talk about for the next 3 minutes is no longer relevant, but I'm going to leave it in here in case you want to hear an in-depth breakdown as to why that change is necessary. And if you would rather skip ahead, I'll leave a timestamp. This is something Blizzard called out in their blue post, and that's the Runic Power economy. So the free glacial advances from this talent currently are proccing Runic Empowerment, and this is too many resources. During Pillar of Frost, this leads to a 30% chance to generate a rune from the Obliteration passive, a 50% chance to generate a rune off of Murderous Efficiency from consuming the Killing Machine effect, and then a 60% chance to generate a rune from Runic Empowerment. This overall adds up to an 86% chance to generate a rune whenever you consume Killing Machine with this talent. This injects too many resources into the rotation for both of the main builds for Frost right now. Yes, that includes Breath. When I tried out both builds on the alpha, there was a significant difference in having this talent versus not. In Obliteration builds, it leads to overcapping a ton of runic power during your Pillar of Frost, because your goal is to be consuming killing machines. You don't really care about your runic power, you're just maintaining your buffs. This generated more runes lets you just keep hitting Obliterate. Likewise for Breath, this current setup turns this part of the tree into almost another set of resource generators for Breath builds. Because of the tweaks to the tree, it's now much more comfortable to take Obliteration and Breath at the same time. Breath wants to talent into Obliteration because this unlocks a powerful resource loop where Rage of the Frozen Champion gives us more rhymes during Pillar gives us more chances to generate a rune, and we're getting the runic power from Rage of the Frozen Champion. Then these Killing Machine procs that we're generating from consuming the rhymes are then firing these glacial advances that are coming with a hefty chance to generate a rune. Now, currently on the alpha, the free glacial advances are not proccing the 30% chance to generate a rune that's on Obliteration, so we'll have to see what's intended, what's not. But from what I've seen so far, and for what Blizzard's asked for on the resource economy, I would say that this talent needs to not provide Runic Empowerment procs. This glacial advance here, I think spending 30 runic power for free while you're still dumping 2 runes on the same GCD, and then if you're playing Breath, you're dumping another 18 runic power for free on that GCD. All of that introduces a concerning feedback loop for Frost resources going forward. My first tests of Breath on the alpha, I was getting 30 seconds, maybe if I was lucky I was getting 40 seconds. Breath in general is hard to keep up, and I was right in there at kind of what Blizzard was expecting. The first attempt where I played the build that goes all the way down to Breath, all the way down to Arctic Assault, I got a 79 second Breath. And this is no Lust, this is no AMS RP, and this was with an average level of secondary stats. This is about 18% haste, so not a crazy low amount, not a crazy high amount to like let me cycle resources. So like everything else about this talent is great, but I do think they need to pull back on this being able to proc Runic Empowerment. So next up on the new talent list, we've got Smothering Offense. Your auto attack damage is increased by 5%. This amount is increased per stack of Icy Talons and can stack up to 2 additional times. Now the wording in the blue post is a little bit vague. When they say it can stack up, they mean Icy Talons. With this, you can go up to 5 stacks of Icy Talons now. If you take Dark Talons and Deathbring, you can go up to a whole 7. So that is a pretty serious attack speed increase, and your auto attack damage is increased. So this is it's not a super like flashy node, but it'll add up, and it feeds into the talents that follow it. Icy Death Torrent and the Long Winter. Icy Death Torrent makes your auto attack critical strikes have a chance to send out a little wave of frost damage to enemies in front of you. With Long Winter, your auto attack critical strikes during Pillar of Frost increase the duration of Pillar of Frost by 1 second, up to 5 seconds. So all of that put together, we've got this auto attack package that obviously the first thing you think of is, oh, dual wield Obliteration is back. It almost certainly is. this should bring the gap between two-hand and dual-wield even closer to hopefully the closest it's ever been. Obviously, dual-wield benefits more from auto-attack focused talents, but two-hand will still get some benefit. And so hopefully where this shakes out is dual-wield gets the full benefit from it, and you've got two-hand with less, but two-hand is getting that free 30% obliterate damage from Might of the Frozen Waste. So they're hopefully ending up really close, and you're maybe even picking your weapon type based on content, because these auto-attack talents do scale into multiple targets, but not quite in the way that 30% extra obliterate damage cleaved onto two other targets does. The main concerns I have, and I think a lot of other people have had with these talents, is they can push Frost into being even more of a constant uptime spec. I don't think this is going to make Frost much more of a constant uptime spec, but it does reinforce that position. This isn't a set of talents that alleviates that in any way. Kind of the big one is Long Winter, and losing auto attack uptime on the boss. Deering Pillar will feel even worse with the Long Winter, but losing that uptime, Deering Pillar it feels real bad anyways. So I don't quite see a problem with this pushing us into more uptime. The concern is more Smothering Offense, and how if you're doing like a boss intermission, or if you're just running between packs in a key and you use your Icy Talon stacks, and then you have Dark Talons with Deathbringer, which operates on a proc, it's going to take a little bit of time to get all of those stacks back. So that's where I mainly see this feeling bad. The other big concern is that with all of this, we will want Wind Fury Totem even more than we already do. We're already one of the best specs to get Wind Fury. This will only increase our desire for it. And if Wind Fury Totem continues to be party-wide, and so obviously this means if you don't have an Enhancement Shaman in your raid, you're going to be really sad. Or if you've got one, but you've got two sub-rogues and two warriors, and you're the Death Knight, and you're the Death Knight, then your raid is picking someone to and you're the Death Knight, then someone in your raid is getting picked to just arbitrarily do less damage, or even have like a different rotation. The specs that tend to do really well off Wind Fury are the specs that can proc something off those extra Wind Fury attacks. So now they're playing with fewer procs, and it's not a fun situation. So I hope maybe we see Wind Fury go raid wide. I don't know if that's on the table or not, but when you see a package of auto attack talents, the first thing you do think is, okay, I am now even more dependent on this raid buff, and I don't know if I want to be that dependent. Finally, in this section here, I'm going to talk about Frost Scythe. This one kind of rides the line between changes to existing talents or a new talent. This is almost a new talent. It's been significantly redesigned. So its new functionality is it has a 30-second cooldown and a 2 rune cost. The damage has been increased to compensate for this longer cooldown, and it has this really neat effect where consuming Killing Machine reduces the cooldown of it by 1 second. And this is a really clever change. I don't know if anyone had this one on their bingo card. A lot of people talked about, just give it 8-second cooldown, 10-second hasted cooldown, make something else cleave, give it a crash lightning treatment. But I think this is better than any of those ideas, because this takes Frost Scythe and turns into something that fits into our rotation, but it's not directly competing with Obliterate anymore, because it's not spammable the way Obliterate is. It will do significantly more damage than Obliterate does, so you always want to press it if you can. And the dynamic cooldown means you don't have like this scripted rotation if you're playing Obliteration, and okay, I start my pillar window, I generate Killing Machine proc, I drop Death and Decay, I weave my procs, and then my last global cooldown is always going to be press Frost Scythe. This dynamic effect means that you gotta pay attention to it. It'll be different how you use it, pull over pull. So this looks like it'll become a staple of our AoE rotation. Since it's got the 2 rune cost, it's something that Breath can look at using, makes it ramp Gathering Storm just as fast as Obliterate. So overall, this should be something that is a natural fit into any AoE build and should be a lot of fun just to play with. So where does this leave Frost overall? I think it leaves us in a better spot. Our pathing's been opened up. We're looking to have more build choices than we did. Obviously, you know, tuning will be what it is, and then there's how does this fit into the content, and so in an individual patch we will see what's common in any spec. You'll see maybe one build kind of take the lead and most people gravitate towards that, but there should be a good number of healthy alternatives for people, or at the very least more hooks that Blizzard can then use to tweak the spec and go, okay, you guys kind of played this way for a patch, but you know, okay, our next tier set is going to do something with the auto attacks and lead into that, and then our builds change up a little bit. Whereas with how Frost was set up before, there was kind of a strict, you know, any extra patch effects, any tier sets, stuff like that, had to be something that worked for Breath and Obliterate, because you were always, you know, in a very firm one or the other. But having more capstones kind of opens up the design space and will, you know, hopefully give Blizzard more things to play with. None of this really drastically reinvents Frost from what it was. It will, I think, still feel it'll be very recognizable to those who have been playing it. I don't think you're going to have to relearn any significant rotation shifts. It'll kind of all just be tweaks to the way you've been playing. I know some people might have liked to have seen a wider rework for Frost, but if that's not on the table at this time, then I think these changes are great on their own. So to go ahead and put a bow on this and wrap all this up, the changes overall, big positive for Frost. They shake up our existing builds, they add new builds, and take Frost in directions that it hasn't really gone in recent memory. Everything they've written sounds great as designed. Nothing leaps out as like, ooh, this, you know, I don't know about this. This needs to be redone. These are all fantastic changes. I think the big points of feedback that, you know, you'll want to pay attention to and think about for yourself and see how it feels when you get a chance to play with this are Arctic Assault, granting Runic Empowerment, and flooding us with resources. I think the biggest point of feedback from these changes is honestly just Arctic Assault granting Runic Empowerment. It injects a lot of resources into both specs. I think this just shouldn't provide resources at all. And then with that done, we can look at things like taking Breath back to 16 Runic power a second. As it plays right now, if you don't take Arctic Assault, that 18 Runic power a second is very punishing to play with. If you mess up just a little bit, your Breath drops so fast. 16 would feel a whole lot better. The rest of the tree just needs to be tuned so that at 16 we aren't back up into 60-second breaths being the norm. Of course, we've still got one more not yet implemented talent that, based on where it's positioned, may have an impact on how Breath plays, so full feedback is still contingent on seeing that. They've also indicated that they have more work to do for Obliteration and its Runic power economy, so things are definitely still in flux. When we get new changes, I'll probably talk about those. And then as it looks like the tree is in its final form, and we've seen a couple runs of changes, we might do some deeper dives into the interactions it has and the feedback that we might want to give because of those interactions. But of course, right now things are still in early state, so the focus is really just on hitting dummies, or if you don't have access to it yet, reading the tooltips and how it sounds to you. This is the time for that kind of broader, I like this, I don't like this feels good, this feels bad feedback. So thanks for sitting with me through this one, everybody, and I'll catch you on the next one.